Welcome to The Explainer, where today we are tackling a massive story, the absolute implosion of Credit Suisse. We're going to break down how one of the world's most famous banks went from being a symbol of Swiss stability to, well, the brink of total collapse. You know, that quote really gets to the heart of it. The whole Credit Suisse saga, it's a wild cautionary tale. It shows how a real pillar of global finance, this icon of Swiss prestige, just completely lost its way, stumbling from one scandal to the next. So, to really get what happened here, you have to look at this huge gap between the bank's shiny public image and the shocking reality behind the curtain. On the one hand, you have the picture of Swiss stability, right? Discretion, national pride. But behind the scenes, oh man, we're talking spies, oligarchs, drug smugglers, and just, as it says here, general chaos. It's like two completely different worlds. All right, so let's dial it back a bit and start at the beginning. We're talking about a true Swiss national icon, basically the Bank of Switzerland. For more than 166 years, Credit Suisse wasn't just a bank. It was woven into the very fabric of the country's identity. So picture this, it's 1856. A famous industrialist named Alfred Escher founds this bank for a very specific reason, to finance the modernization of Switzerland. We're talking about building the nation's railways, its industry, everything. So from day one, its history was completely tied up with the country's success. It really was the Bank of Switzerland. Okay, so how did this giant machine actually work? Well, it had four main parts, kind of like interlocking cogs. At the very center of it all was wealth management, basically serving the world's richest people. Everything else, all the other divisions like asset management, the investment bank, even the regular Swiss bank on the street corner, they all fed into that one central mission. But then, the cracks started to show. And this is where we get into Spygate. See, in 2019, those well-oiled cogs started to grind and come loose. And it didn't start with some big financial crisis. Nope. It started with a totally bizarre and public feud. Something straight out of a soap opera, honestly. So, this is where we meet our main characters, the CEO, Tijanier Thiam, and his star wealth manager, a guy named Iqbal Khan. And their rivalry was intense. It just spiraled completely out of control. What makes this so wild is that they weren't just colleagues. They were literally next-door neighbors on Zurich's super-exclusive Gold Coast. And I'm not kidding when I say this got petty. It's almost comical. First, Khan builds a bigger house. Then the CEO accuses him of building a window just to look into his lounge. So the CEO plants these huge trees to block Khan's view of the lake. It even got to the point where their partners had a massive argument at a party. I mean, this kind of public drama is so not the Swiss way, and it was a huge red flag that something was really wrong with the culture inside the bank. And just when you think it can't get crazier, Khan quits to go to their biggest rival, UBS. And what does Credit Suisse do? They hire private investigators to follow him. This all ends in a public confrontation, like right in downtown Zurich. It was a full-blown spy scandal, and the fallout was huge. The CEO, Thiam, was ultimately forced to resign over the whole mess. So, new CEO comes in, promises a clean slate for 2021. Everybody's hoping they can just move on from Spygate. Instead, they walked straight into a year of pure chaos. The billion-dollar disasters. This was, without a doubt, the worst year in the bank's entire history.
First up, the Greensill collapse. So the bank had been pushing its wealthiest clients really hard to invest in these funds run by a company called Greensill Capital. They were promising it was super safe, great returns, all that. Well, it turns out Greensill was basically a house of cards. When it imploded, boom, $10 billion of client funds were just frozen.
And just weeks later, another bomb goes off. This time, it's the Archegos implosion. A single client, the secretive firm called Archegos, made these massive, risky bets using borrowed money, and it all blew up. This one cost the bank $5.5 billion. That's the biggest single trading loss in its 166-year history. Unbelievable. So you gotta be asking yourself, right? How does something like this happen twice in the span of a month? Well, an external report on the Archegos mess revealed what everyone kind of suspected. They found stunning deficiencies in risk management. Basically, there was this problematic risk culture, where they would bend over backwards to please risky clients and chase profits, even when all the alarm bells were ringing. And that's when it became painfully clear to everyone.
These disasters, Greensill and Archegos, they weren't just isolated incidents. No, they were part of a much longer, much more troubling legacy of scandal, a pattern of misconduct that went back for decades.
I mean, you look back, and the list of scandals is just staggering. We're talking about helping a Bulgarian cocaine smuggling ring launder money, arranging $3 billion in so-called tuna bonds for Mozambique, where a ton of the money just vanished, and then the Suisse secrets leak in 2022, which exposed a whole history of banking for kleptocrats and human traffickers. The pattern is just, it's right there. You can't deny it.
Okay, so the bank is in full-on crisis mode. They've got to clean house, right? So they bring in this renowned turnaround artist, Sir Antonio Horta Osorio, to be the new chairman. This is supposed to be the guy who fixes everything.
But, and you can't make this stuff up, the guy hired to fix the culture becomes a scandal himself. His time as chairman lasted less than 9 months. Why? Because he got caught repeatedly breaking COVID quarantine rules so he could go to, get this, the Wimbledon and Euro finals. The hypocrisy was just too much. He had to resign. And just like that, the bank was right back in another leadership crisis.
Which brings us pretty much to the present day. After all this, can this bank even be saved? We're talking about a fight for its very survival. The share price has been hammered, its reputation is in tatters, and the big question is there a way out?
And look, the numbers here really paint a grim picture. In the year after the Archegos and Greensill disasters, the share price was cut in half. Credit rating agencies like S&P started downgrading them, which is a really bad sign. And all the top talent, they started leaving in droves. You can just feel the clock ticking.
So, what's the future for Credit Suisse? This isn't just any bank, remember. It's one of the most systemically important banks in the world. Its failure would have huge ripple effects. So what happens next? There are a few pretty dramatic possibilities on the table. So, what are the options left? Well, one is a merger with its biggest rival, UBS, kind of a forced marriage, really. Another is a complete breakup, selling it off piece by piece for parts. Or is there a third way? Can the new leadership team somehow pull off a miracle and turn this massive ship around for a slow, painful recovery?
And that quote right there, it just captures the whole problem perfectly. Even after everything we've talked about, all the scandals, with old problems still bubbling up, nobody knows for sure if they've even hit rock bottom yet. And that's the scariest part. The only thing we know for sure is that the story of this fallen giant is definitely not over.